The Detroit Lions are scared of the Minnesota Vikings. They have proposed a new rule to challenge the Minnesota Vikings in their next matchup. So we're going to be talking about this absolutely insane rule and why this makes zero sense in this video. Very quickly before we get into it, be sure to hit the sub button if you haven't already. We know that just over 70% of you guys watching right now are not subscribed to the channel, and we know that you guys are going to want to hear the updates from this rule, whatever comes out of it, so be sure to hit the sub button. But Griffen, we got a wild one here today. Pulling up this first screenshot. This week, the Lions will bring a rule change proposal to the NFL owners' meetings, pleading for the league to eliminate the award of an automatic first down as a penalty for defensive holding and illegal contact. Now, if I have never in my life, if I have ever seen a rule that really just goes against one team, it is this one. The Detroit Lions cannot play defense when it comes to keeping it clean. We've been able to see that in the past few seasons. The Detroit Lions love to gut away with stuff, and they're trying to do it once again. Trying to eliminate the automatic first down after a clear infraction of getting a first down, getting a deep ball, anything. And we know that Justin Jefferson loves to play against this team, loves to take these penalties against the Lions. This is absolutely insane. Now, Griffen, I know we have a lot to get into here today, but what do you think about this rule? Before we kind of get into the in-depth stats, why this was happening, how this is impacting the Lions versus the Vikings, as well as Justin Jefferson, because we know this is who it's about, because they cannot guard the best wide receiver in the NFL. Why this is impacting him, let me know what you think.
The Lions have one season where they feel like they're unstoppable, and then they want to become the Detroit Chiefs and just trying to make sure that everything can tip in their favor. Because this isn't the only rule change that they're proposing at the NFL annual meeting today. There's another one that they're proposing about trying to change the playoff seeding, because if they're in a spot where they finish 15-3 or 14-3 like Minnesota did last season and they get that number 5 seed, they're going to go crying and whining all the way to Roger Goodell's office trying to get a plea bargain or trying to get some pity so that they can get a home playoff game or try and get a better playoff spot or have more home playoff games. It's absolutely ridiculous. And of course, it's a team like the Lions because they play us twice a year. So of course, they're going to be upset, and especially like on the basis of it, if you're looking at this proposal and you're not knowing what the reason why behind the Lions are doing it, maybe you can give it a little bit of an objectivity, and think, okay, I can see why they're doing it. But the reason why they're doing it, which we're going to get into in a second, and like you kind of alluded to, is because of Justin Jefferson. The reasoning behind it is because of one player, and that one player is the best wide receiver in the league. And guess what? You want to apply it because of one player. How did that happen? How did that work out against you against Terry McLaurin, by the way, in the divisional round? What happened there? You couldn't shut him down. You couldn't shut De'Ami Brown down by any stretch of the imagination either, and you guys were talking all that smack about him. So yeah, you guys want to make all this argument because it's Justin Jefferson. Well, what about the other wide receivers you guys couldn't guard? Are you guys making that proposal because of them too? No, you're singling out Justin Jefferson because you play him twice a year, and because for the past 4 seasons since he's been in the league, he's absolutely torched you guys, except for a fair amount of occasions we're going to get into later on in this video, so I'm going to save that rant for that moment. However, overall, in general, just looking at this, it's absolutely ridiculous, and of course it's coming from the Detroit Lions because they're absolutely scared.
Yeah, as soon as, I think this is the only time I'm going to agree with Packers fans, but as soon as the NFC North actually starts to get a bit competitive between the rest of the teams, the Lions run away scared. They know they're getting older. They know they're getting worse. Jared Goff is getting older, and then they're going to be hopeless. We know that's going to be the case. That's been the case for years, and it's just a matter of time until Jared Goff can no longer throw the ball. So they're doing anything they can, to just get a win out of this season, out of the NFC North, especially against wide receivers like Justin Jefferson, who they play, as you mentioned, twice a year. You get to see them more than often, and as you mentioned as well, the stats that we have later, you're going to want to see them. You're not going to want to miss those because we have every game breakdown stats from Justin Jefferson versus the Detroit Lions, which will give us a very good example into it. But we'll wait for that in a little bit later. But I want to pull up the reasonings as to why this article is saying this and kind of going over why Detroit has buried itself with these penalties, committing more than any other team over the past 2 seasons. Meanwhile, Minnesota has been the biggest benefactor of an automatic first down rule on these calls, and that's thanks to a large part Justin Jefferson. Now, start this off. The Detroit Lions could simply not play press man defense. They know that they can play zone. They know they can do anything, but to stop the receivers that are dominating this team, to stop the receivers that are completely terrorizing this organization, they have to go out and try and make a rule change that it won't be an automatic first down. That's like if you're playing hockey, you call a boarding penalty, just run someone to the boards, it's not called a boarding penalty, or hit from behind. It's a complete blatant, penalty. Regardless of what happens, you're stopping the play before it happens. You're trying to avoid the big plays because you know it's bound to happen. You know your defense sucks. You know everything is going to happen at that time, and they're trying to get away with it because they cannot simply guard that play. They can't guard the best receiver in the league, and they're a pity of an organization. So, it really makes sense that this team, the Detroit Lions, are trying to do this because Justin Jefferson is at the helm of this. But I did want to, before we get into yours, Griffen, I want to kind of go on to this as well. According to Warren Sharp of Sharp Football Analysis, Detroit has committed 26 defensive holdings or illegal contact penalties since 2023. Clean it up or just go home. You don't need to have this rule change. It's simple. Play ball. Don't commit penalties. Stop trying to illegally guard the best receiver in the league because we know he's the best, you know he's the best, and there's no way you can stop it. So, Griffen, I want to know what you think about these last two screenshots. First of all, the 26 defensive penalties since 2023. It's quite a lot. Really goes to show how handsy they're being with the receivers when they know they're going to get blown by in the middle of their defense. And also, this part is the big part that we've been talking about. Justin Jefferson. Detroit has the most. Minnesota has the least. Or, well, I guess benefited the most from this. What do you think about it?
Well, how many of those penalties were against Minnesota specifically is what I want to see. So that's another argument against those Lions fans that are saying, "Oh, it's because of this, that." Well, you guys are doing it against other teams. It's not just Justin Jefferson. And yeah, Minnesota being the recipient of that, it's because Justin Jefferson is the best in the game. It's just hard to block him. It's no different than what we saw with Randy Moss, where guys didn't know how to block him. Steve Smith, to a certain extent, they didn't know how to block him either. Tyreek Hill for the longest time, and still to this day, people double team and block him. Jamar Chase, it's the same thing. So if other teams are able to do it, how come Detroit can't do it? It's the same as saying to a buddy that you're playing in Madden who's pulling the same cheesy play that you can't stop and getting mad at him and trying to ban the play for because you can't stop it. Well, do something to stop it then. Make the adjustments, game plan for it. Do something. Don't just sit there and let him keep running it. And yes, everyone's going to jump on it and say, "Oh, what about the tush push?" This is different than the tush push. Tush push is uneven in the sense that you can't push a defender into another defender to gain momentum. So why isn't it the same case on the offensive side of the ball? If you're going to do anything, if you're going to ban one, ban the other. If you're going to allow one, allow the other. That's the thing with that one. In this case scenario, it's completely ridiculous because how many times have we seen on deep shots where they have a wide open touchdown and the only form of defense he has is to get a pass interference call. So on a thing like that, where he did a blatant penalty within the red zone, if it's a massive deep shot or that will completely flip field position, how are you expected to just take the ball 5 yards from where the ball was previously snapped when that would have been a guaranteed catch that would have flipped field position in general? Where is the logic in that? That absolutely makes no sense. If they're upset about it being on a matter of 5-10 yards, okay, whatever. But Justin Jefferson likes to go on the deep balls. Minnesota likes to sling it deep on that. And a lot of teams like to sling it deep on Detroit in general. Look at the amount of shootouts that they were in this past season, all because their secondary couldn't cover. My brother is a diehard Lions fan. He'd be the first one to tell you that their secondary got absolutely cooked and torched all season long by receivers, and that's why they were in shootouts. It didn't matter how good their pass rush was because their secondary was absolute toast. So what are they trying to do? Well, they see, okay, we lost our offensive coordinator, we lost our defensive coordinator, we're a little depleted now. Everyone in our division got a little bit better. We might have got a little bit worse, and now we're a little bit scared, and now we're going to go cry to Daddy Roger Goodell and see what he can do for us because we know that they want a Chiefs and Lions Super Bowl or they want a Chargers and Lions Super Bowl. We know that they want to see the Lions in the Super Bowl, and the NFL wants to see the Lions in the Super Bowl. They want it to happen. However, in the game of football, as much as people want to say it's rigged or as much as people want to say this or that about how the outcomes of the games are altered, at the end of the day, when you're a team that runs into a team that's just better than you and can expose you, that's what's going to happen. And that's what happened to the Lions last year in the playoffs against Washington. They were the perfect team to expose them. Mobile quarterback, deep threat wide receivers to expose that terrible secondary. And that's what we're going to see next year as well, with these teams just picking on this Detroit Lions team that doesn't have Aaron Glenn, that doesn't have Ben Johnson, that has an aging Jared Goff who got exposed to hell in the playoffs. And it's just going to continue on for Detroit Lions, and they're going to go back to misery, and I'm going to be very happy again.
Yeah, listen, I'm all for rule changes. Anything that makes sense, absolutely, go and do it. But what you just said, Griffen, and comes down to the exact point of why this new rule change does not make sense. If you're going for a deep ball, 70-yard Hail Mary, to win the game touchdown, let's just say they do, let's just say a holding call, 5 yards, you'll gain it. It's going to be an automatic touchdown. That makes no sense. It really just makes zero sense. So, as I mentioned, if a rule change makes sense, as you mentioned as well, the tush push, make it fair, both sides, whatever, whether or not you want to keep the tush push, allow the defenders to get pushed into it, fine by me. Whatever makes the game make more sense. But this one is just completely out the window, makes zero sense. And it's just because, as you mentioned, the Detroit Lions are scared of what's going to happen when their organization continues to tumble down and everybody starts to get older. But we're not done yet. There's still more of that. Another notable statistic, the NFL Ref Stats compiled a plus-minus for automatic first downs surrendered for the two penalties and found that Detroit was the worst performer with a minus 26 rating. Once again, it goes to show that the secondary is just not capable of defending anybody with a bit of talent. And it's been going to show from the Minnesota Vikings. It's been going to show from the playoffs last year. Jared Goff, when it don't benefit him, and as you mentioned, the shootouts that they have, it makes sense why this stat is here. Minus 26 rating on that. They're giving up so many yards on their defense that Jared Goff has to go out and make more plays than he necessarily needs to. And Jared Goff, right now, at this very point in time, a fantastic quarterback. There's no denying that. But as he gets older, they know that he's not going to be able to continue to do that at a consistent rate, and their defense is not getting better with this at all. And they need to change something drastically, or they need to change a rule. And in this case, the rule change makes zero sense. So I just don't know what the Detroit Lions are thinking trying to do this. But one more thing before we get into our Justin Jefferson stats versus the Detroit Lions. Instead of adapting like the Packers did in 1999, loading up a defensive back and changing their coverage to combat Randy Moss, Detroit is trying to rewrite the rule book to limit Jefferson's impact. It's a clear shot from the defending NFC North champions to tip the scales more in its favor, and no one will be hampered more than the Vikings and Justin Jefferson. Now, Justin Jefferson definitely garners in quite a few of these penalties. He's definitely a big fan of this rule. But when we're looking at our stats here from Justin Jefferson, from the Detroit Lions, he's put up some incredible numbers from the Lions in the past. But the big thing here on that side, he's had 4 touchdowns in 10 games against the Detroit Lions. However, 1,200 yards in 10 games against the Lions, that's a pretty amazing stat. Let's not just kind of surpass that for a moment. Goes to show how many holes there are in the secondary of that Lions team over the past 5 seasons. But he has really shown that, not just the penalty yards, but also any ball that goes to him, he's capable of getting. And it goes to show the lack of defense on the Detroit Lions. So, Griffen, I want to know what you think about this. How this graph here, or this StatMuse, it all comes from StatMuse, by the way. This graph here, this stats, shows that impact that Justin Jefferson has on the Lions, the rule, and why this rule change makes zero sense.
Well, for starters, I'm glad that his best game against the Lions was one that I was there for and got to see in person. Unfortunately, we didn't get the win. That was the Penei Sewell trick play that sealed the game, but it was awesome to see him just absolutely torch that Lions defense. But the main thing here I want to look at too is that, he's torched the Lions. 60% of the time, he absolutely wrecks them. Have they won all those games? Not necessarily. So why are Lions fans crying? One, that's the first time where I'm like, well, okay, why are you crying, Lions fans? Second one, look at his stats for the 2 times he played them this season. Under 100 yards both times. Only 4 times has he played them and gotten less than 100 yards, and they both happened last season. That's a little weird considering that we were right with Detroit the whole time, and Detroit finally won the division from us over these past 2 seasons. So they're still kind of saying, okay, well, it's still not good enough. We still need something. And then you also look at, like I said earlier, how many of their negative 26 point differential in those penalties were against Minnesota specifically. And you can look at Minnesota specifically. They might have gotten a lot in that, but they play them twice a year. And if you're looking at applying it to Justin Jefferson and the Lions being like, oh, well, we can't stop him, because that's all this is. It's really just the Lions complaining about not being able to stop Justin Jefferson and any other wide receiver for that matter, because look at the wide receiver numbers that they put up, like I said earlier, but also with Justin Jefferson as well, they're looking at it and saying, oh, we can't block him. And other teams that have been able to contain him are looking at it going, well, we can do that. They can do that. That team can do that. How come you can't do that? You're the leading of the division. You're supposed to be the best team in the league. You're supposed to be the super team in this team that's just absolutely unstoppable in boat racing teams. Well, how come you can't stop Justin Jefferson? Or how come you get torched by him all the time? Well, maybe it's because they play him so often, but if you play him so often, maybe you should know how to contain him. Yeah, you've contained him the past 2 seasons, and he's probably gotten more yards and those penalties than he has in receiving yards. So, yet you're still crying and complaining that it's not enough, even though you won the division, contained him under 100 yards both games, and you still are complaining when other teams have been able to stop him. It's not just you guys that aren't able to stop him, but it's not also just you guys that are able to stop him. So yeah, it's a thing where we're all teams in the NFL. Everyone got to play by the same rules. Everyone can game plan to accordingly to two players. Some teams do it better than others. Some teams just don't do it at all. And the Lions are one of those teams that just can't do it.
Yeah, this is sad and embarrassing by the Detroit Lions, especially being a team that are supposed to be so good, at top of the division, top of the NFC most years, and it just really makes no sense. I'm very excited to see how quickly this gets thrown out at the meetings for this offseason, and how embarrassed the Detroit Lions are going to be by this, just simply because the reaction from this is not going to be great from the rest of the NFL, but that's going to be something that we're going to have to keep an eye on over the next few weeks as these meetings kind of progress and the more reactions of this comes out. So that's all we got in this video right now, but be sure to hit the sub button, join us here on the channel when we do cover this later, when we kind of get the official ruling and wording from this and kind of the reaction as well from the rest of the NFL. But like I mentioned, you're going to have to wait for that and hit the sub button to join us here. But that's all we got in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well before it's signing out. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.